Welcome to Whitetail Rendezvous, hosted by Bruce Hutchin. I'm so happy you joined us today, and you're going to find out a lot about whitetail hunting on the show. This is Whitetail Rendezvous Podcast, episode number 380. We're heading down to West Virginia. We're going to hook up with Josh Bias and his buddy, John Four. Josh is going to tell us all about hunting West Virginia bucks in the Appalachian Mountains. It's hard, it's difficult, but it can be done. How can it be done? Well, use topo maps to figure out pinch points and saddles. Knowing that bucks love to run the ridges during the rut, John and Josh set up trail cameras so they can see what's happening. They can see what trails are being used. He plays the wind because in the mountain, the wind goes up and down and all around. Also, when you start thinking about trail cameras, he utilizes Deer Lab with John Livingston. Check out Deer Lab and you'll be surprised what you're going to find. All in all, folks, this is a very informative show, and I don't think you want to miss any minute of it. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. Josh Bias of Calculated Killers. It's never too early to think about food plots. Whitetail Rendezvous has an ebook for you. Just simply text 33444 food plot to get your copy. Welcome to another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous. Hey, we're heading down to West Virginia and down into the Carolinas, and we're going to connect with a guy that just really likes to hunt big bucks. Josh Bias. Is that correct, Josh?
Yeah, that is correct. Bias. B-I-A-S.
Well, thank you for that, sir, and welcome to Whitetail Rendezvous. And I'm excited to jump into the show because you're from some counties down there, Wyoming and McDowell counties in southern West Virginia, that you've been telling me there's some big bucks around. What's all about that?
Yeah, we've got some great deer, and it's all because back in the late 70s, we had a real low deer population down there, so the state decided to close all gun hunting down there and make it archery only. And, for 70s and 80s, bow hunting wasn't that big. So it allowed a lot of good deer to mature. And it's still to this day, a 1 buck limit and archery only tackle. So it's been over 30 years and, a lot of deer reach their maturity. But it is super rough terrain. I mean, it's very steep and rugged terrain. So it makes it a little bit harder to get on them as well. So that helps them. And you've got a lot of deer that mature now. We don't have hardly any ag land. So that in turn, takes away some, you ain't going to get none of the super high scoring deer. I mean, we produce a lot of 160 to 170, mid 170s type deer. And occasionally you'll get, 180 or 200. But we've got a lot of, I think the average, I run some numbers, and the average buck for all four is like 141 over the last 5 or 6 years.
And what's wrong with that?
Not a thing, in my opinion. And I try to target, I like getting history on a lot of deer and trying to figure them out. And I try to target the, at least 4.5, or been trying to target mainly 5.5-year-old deer the last few years. So usually if you can let them get to 5.5, 80% of them will be, 150s or redder type deer. And then if you can, keep them healthy as far as supplemental feeding, and do it right throughout the year and keep them healthy, mineral sites and all that, you can, produce a few more that are a little bit bigger. We've got one that we've been chasing that should push. Well, we've got two actually, and one we killed last year that was 176 gross. And then we've got a couple more that are low 170s probably.
And that's good. How big's the deer in the trail camera that you shot with that you sent with your bio?
I think we thought he was a lot bigger from those pictures, but after he shed velvet, he didn't have quite the mass we thought. In my opinion, I think he's probably pushing 170. I think he's in the high 60s, low 170s possibly, but he's got that real wide, massive frame, and obviously the double, drop tines that come off these G1s are kind of flyer drops, so that kind of adds to his looks. He's kind of one of those wow factor bucks. And then I've got another one I don't think I sent you that's real massive, and he's probably low 70s himself, and he's probably got, gosh, 48, 50 inches of mass, I'd say.
Oh my goodness, because the buck I'm looking at, man, he's got a lot of character. I know it's a
Yeah.
trail camera, shot, but just a lot of character. And that's great. So give me a little bit of background how you got into hunting big bucks.
Well, like most, I started off, bow hunting when I was 14 or 15 and went through the growing phase. You know what I mean? I hunted, brown down for a few years, and then I finally got my taste of a big deer and lucked up and kind of got on him and killed him. And then that changed things for me, and I started getting a little bit more selective, but I was still growing. So I wasn't as selective as I am today, but it just finally, like most know, it's a addiction that once it gets in your blood, it's kind of hard to shake. And now it's turned into a year-round obsession for me. And the last 8 or 10 years, I probably, spent more time than I ever have, in trying to strictly kill 4+ year old deer and manage for them. And I like getting a lot of history on them and trying to go after deer that I've got multiple years of history with.
And that's the fun of it. I think if you can watch a deer grow up and then you're patting him all the time and sort of kind of know where he lives, but sometimes you don't get him, even though you get all that data, you know where he is, you know where he's living, and still never get a shot.
Yeah, we've got one that we have been after on, the area I hunt, and it's coal company ground. It's not private property. So there's some other people that get in there, but it's a little bit rougher where I go into, and for some reason people just drive by it and overlook it. But we've got one I call Swoop, and if I can think about it, I'll email you some pictures of him so you can put him up. And in my opinion, he's he's at least 8, if not older. And I think he's more like 9 or 10 years old. And he ain't no super high scoring deer, but he's been like number one on the hit list for the last 2 or 3 years, and we just can't get on him. And my cousin actually shot him. There's a little bit of a story to go with that, because I had him on camera coming in every day, and I decided not to hunt one evening, and this was in December of 2015. I wanted to stay home and watch my Bengals play football, and unfortunately, when I pulled that camera, who was there that evening for the last 45 minutes of daylight but Swoop, and then my cousin ended up shooting him the next day in another stand about 100 yards, probably 200 yards, on back on the point, and wounded him. And we couldn't find him, but we tracked him for, probably 6 miles for 2 days, and never did find him, but I didn't think he was dead. And luckily, he showed back up on camera a few days later, and he fully recovered. And we had him this year too. And like I said, this is when I think he was 9. Probably was the summer of 2016. But he disappeared on us in October, and I don't know if maybe where he's so old that he got pushed out by some of because we had 2 or 3 other deer that were maturing and coming into their own. And maybe they pushed him out of the area and he lost his home range. I'm not sure. Or if maybe he succumbed to, other things, because we did have a bout with EHD in that area this year. So I've been looking when I've had time to go up, trying to find these remains, but I haven't found them. But yeah, he's one we all wanted, and he always outsmarted us. He made a mistake one time, and I wasn't there to capitalize, and then he made a mistake actually the next evening, but, my cousin couldn't come through on that.
So, where do you think your cousin hit him? If he recovered, did he hit him high?
I've got pictures. You can see the shot. He hit him back. It was right at dark, and he hit him a little bit back, and it was. I honestly don't know why he didn't kill the deer, because it looked like a gut shot to me. Unfortunately, I hate a gut shot, as do everybody, but it does happen. But he hit him back and a little bit high. So I guess he maybe just got into the top of his, maybe right above the guts, maybe right into the back of his tenderloin area. It was the only thing I could think of. He got in, we thought at first, because he wasn't sure where he hit, that it was lung blood, because it looked like lung blood. But I guess he just cut a few veins or blood vessels or whatever. Because when we first started tracking him, and I've got some video and stuff of that, I need to get up on the page, but it looked like lung blood. I thought, I was congratulating him because I thought he was dead the first 300 yards of the track job, and he bedded down 3 or 4 times, and then he just kept getting stronger. And he actually, that track job's a story in itself, what he done and how he backtracked and threw us off his trail because we ended up closing. We never did see him, but we started pushing him, but we really didn't realize it. But he made a huge circle that took us 6 miles and ended up coming right back by the spot he was at the evening before when he shot him, and walked right by our four-wheelers and crossed over into another holler and then went another mile up through there before we finally lost blood.
They're something, aren't they?
Yes, they are. And that track job, taught me a lot about just tracking deer in general, the things that they'll do to, because like I said, we thought we lost blood 2 or 3 times, and he would go back and backtrack in his exact same steps for, 10 or 15 yards, and then just do a complete 90 and shoot straight up the hill. And when I'm talking about hills, I'm talking about steep, really rough terrain. Very steep. And and at that point, I told him, I said, I don't think you're going to find him. I said, he's going up stuff like this. He ain't as hurt as bad as we thought he was. I said, he's trying to shake us. And then he ended up doing that 2 or 3 more times after that first time. But the first time was the most impressive about what he done, because he went back through some stuff that was pretty hard to get through the first time. But he turned around and went right back through these same steps and went back through that underbrush and then cut up the hill. And the only thing I could think of was he knew that we was pushing him and he was trying to throw us off his track.
They're smart. Say, let's get into when you mentioned terrain and let people know the kind of mountains that you are hunting down in Appalachian area.
Like I said, it's very rough, and it's in the Appalachian Mountains, and it is the roughest of the Appalachian Mountains, in my opinion. We don't have a lot of, the area I hunt's about 1,800 foot in elevation, but it gets there a whole lot quicker than 90% of the other areas. And you don't get that many, your biggest bench in the area I'll hunt, where it comes up and flattens off, is probably 10, 15 yards at most. And I kind of look for, I study a lot of topo maps, and I'll find terrain pinches, which is like a funnel in the Midwest, basically. And it'll pinch all the deer movement down in a certain area. And then if you can find get on an old strip job and find some old gas well roads or stuff like that kind of help pinch them down, along with some of the areas where the terrain naturally pinches down, and you can take man-made stuff and it pinches them down even more. I found an area this past year, and in the mountains, it's hard to find, really tight pinches, but this area tightens down to like probably 50 yards at most. And I set a camera in there to scout for next year, and I was blown away at how many pinches. I had every shooter buck or every buck in the area came through there during the daylight at least once within a 3-week period during November. So we are in the process of getting a stand hung in that pinch here in the next few weeks.
Isn't that interesting? Because you're hunting non-ag land. I mean, there's not food plots around, and we're going to talk about minerals in a little bit. But topography in the mountains, and I hunt elk and mule deer and other critters out here. If you watch the topography, deer and elk and other critters, they're basically, what's the easiest way to get from here to there, and they take those steps. I mean, they unless they're chased like you were tracking that one, but just take a break here. Topo Maps and Google Plus or Google Earth, all are great tools, because you can see an overlay of an area and say, there's a saddle. Hey, there's where 2 ridges come together and then they drop down into the next valley or hollow, as you call it. So spend a lot of time, folks, not in the woods, but working on the woods, just sitting at your desk or wherever you have your laptop or computer, and that works for me. Let's go, Roy.
Yeah, and
go ahead.
Just to go top off on that, one of the better ways, if you're not real good at reading topo maps, way I taught myself was, Steve Flores writes some great stuff on reading the maps. He's from my area, and you can learn a lot of. You can search some of Steve's stuff, but go to an area that and that's a pinch that you've learned, and look at it, and then go back and compare it on a topo map, and that'll help you find areas. Just by knowing a place, and then go in and walk them, because you always got to walk them. You can pinpoint them, but some of them don't pan out because there could be a road right through the middle of it or whatever. But it's best. The way I learned was starting with something I knew was a pinch in a couple areas, and then I would look at it on a topo and see what I was looking for, and then I started finding areas like that in other places.
Let's talk about your use of minerals. Now, I'm assuming it's legal in West Virginia.
Yes, we're allowed to bait and use minerals. We do, like I said, I do supplemental feed and stuff a lot, but we don't hunt over the feed. We'll travel to and from, just like, people in the Midwest or whatever hunt a cornfield or, a food plot. I don't hunt right over top of the feeder, but I do hunt travel to and from them. And I've not been feeding but a few years. The minerals we've been running for, the last 5 or 6 years. And I use trophy rock minerals for the most part, and deer cane for the liquid.
Now, are you putting them on stumps, or how you putting the mineral sites up?
I have, it's hard to find a stump in the right area. I will use stump if it's in the place I want, but I try to keep them. I don't know. I try to make one every 200, 250 acres, maybe not even that big in some instances. It's according to how the lay of the land is, and I try to keep them in high canopy areas, which is good summer cover. Where you don't have, it's a little bit cooler, I guess, in the summer for them, so they like to stay in those areas more. And I try to put them in different. Kind of hard to explain this, but like what I feel is like you can tell it's got an intersection from home ranges. I mean, you can kind of tell like there's going to be different deer here, different deer in this area. Like on one side of the holler, then I might go down a long point and put another one, and then go on back and probably half a mile make another one. Maybe not quite that far, a quarter of a mile make another one, and try to keep them where the terrain changes a little bit. And then I try to find high terrain area or high canopy areas to put them.
One thing that's been helpful for me is when home ranges, not core areas, but home ranges intersect. And if you can find, one north, south, east, and west, and then put your mineral, where it's legal, put your minerals right where they intersect. And you can tell where they intersect because sometimes there's rubs that have been there forever, and one will be from the let's say one from the north and one from the south, and you go, well, what's that all about? Well, the one deer lives in the north, he comes down, the one from the south comes down, and they just kind of mark their territory. And the same thing you can find with scrapes, but if you can find a series or a cluster of rub lines that kind of look, okay, how did this all happen? You can be pretty sure that you get an intersecting of home ranges, and then just letting each other know they're not fussing because they got their own does to play with, but they're just letting each other know and look for those. And if you find them, that's a great place for minerals.
Yes, it is. And you can learn a lot about, like you said, the core range and home ranges of different bucks, from minerals. Like I said, I like to spread them out a little bit, and I'll get, there'll be 1 or 2 mineral sites where I'll get all the bucks. But then you'll have this buck or that buck show up, at this side every day, and then this buck or that buck that was at that other one show up at another side every day. And you can learn a lot, about each buck's core range or home range, which way they're coming from and where they kind of prefer to spend their time. Because that swoop buck I was talking about earlier, he would show up on 2 sites 80% of the time, and then I would never see him at another site, which was only, it wasn't a quarter of a mile away, and he would never show up at that one. So that was just, you could tell it wasn't in his home range. He just was never out there, and we've never seen him out there during the fall either.
Good stuff. Let's switch it up and scent control, the wind, thermals, and how do you handle those swirling winds that come and bounce off ridges, drop into hollows, and you got, temperature changes. I mean, it's hard hunting the mountains for whitetails.
It is very hard, and thankfully, we are sponsored and have a staff position with Scent Crusher, and that has been a game changer the last couple of years for us. It's just, the ozone technology, whether, you got a lot of disbelievers in it, but it does work. And that has been huge for us because you try to play the wind and you try to put yourself in the right areas, but it's still hard. Like you said, you get a lot of swirl. I don't care where you're at, you're going to get swirling winds up there. And it ain't like the Midwest. You just can't drop down and go get in another stand because it takes, it's hard to get around up there to just get down and go climb in another tree somewhere else. So I don't really pay a lot of attention to the wind direction. Now, I got a couple places. I like hunting east-west running ridges. And when I got a north-south wind, I'll always hunt one of those ridges because the deer like to cruise those ridges, especially if you can find what I was talking about earlier, a terrain pinch on the side of one of those ridges. And those bucks like to cruise up and down those east-west running ridges so they can scent check anything below them or above them. And then with the thermals rising of the mornings, you know what I mean? You get a wind coming over the top and then the thermals are rising, it kind of creates a swirl just under the ridge right there. And a lot of bucks will cruise that ridge back and forth until they, scent check a hot doe. And then, they're off. I found a lot of luck doing that. The deer I killed this past year, I actually killed him in a spot just like that.
So listen to that and take a note on that because bucks during the rut, they will run ridges. And because the wind's their friend. One, if those in estrus are close, they can smell that. Two, they can smell you or other predators. And, they can see, they can smell, so they get everything. And then depends on which way the threat comes, they just drop off one side or the other and they're gone.
Yep. And it's quick. Like you said, they can get out of there very quick. It works out. It's all an advantage for them. And most of the time, that's, what they travel in. They ain't going to put themselves at risk no more than they have to, which they do, during the rut. And that's mainly when I try to hunt 2 or 3 weeks during the rut when it's the hottest. Because I don't, I work 40 hours. I don't get a lot of time off, so I try to save my vacation days for, around a 14-day period, and then we hit it hard then.
Let's talk about getting the most from your trail cameras. You brought that up, and you're talking about your hit list and the history you've got. You're watching deer grow through age classes. So trail cameras are pretty important to you. So let's unpack that a little bit and share with the listeners just how you make your trail cameras work for you.
Well, a few years ago, everybody likes getting pictures, but you've always, I started learning that I started seeing a couple deer. This was in 2012 and 2013. I was starting to notice certain deer were showing up in the same areas year after year around that same time frame, usually within a 5 to 7 day window. They'd always be back there, and this is, I've seen this a lot. So then I started taking everything on the camera and keeping weather logs. And then when I would get high activity days on my cameras, I would go back and check these weather logs and try to find out what was the trigger to put these deer on their feet that day. Whether it be, most of the time it's barometer, the weather, some kind of front coming in or whatever. And that's helped me kind of pick and choose the days I can hunt when I can't hunt, which is going to be better. So I always try to make sure to always set your date and time on your cameras, and they're a scouting tool for a reason. Pull every bit of info you can off of them. It takes some time, but it's worth it. You can figure out a lot of good patterns. And I use Deer Lab, and Deer Lab's an amazing, because that helps take away the log and all that. You can just go back to the Deer Lab and pull your info and start, keeping a log on certain deer. And they've actually got it where you can, set up logs on there for certain deer and start pulling info off of it. But, the deer I killed in 2014, every time I had his picture on this one point, Deer Lab showed me, it was always with a northwest wind. And this was, I don't know, probably 3 pictures, but it was 3 pictures within a 7 or 8 day period getting close to the rut. And then looking at a map, I could see why, because he was scent checking everything coming up the holler, the biggest holler coming up through there. The wind was hitting him right in the quartering into his face, so he could scent check anything below him. So luckily, the first morning of vacation, we had a northwest wind, and I went in there and I killed that deer at 8:30. And then I had another deer, and this was Deer Lab, and I was unfortunately wasn't able to catch up with him. But every time I had his picture on a east-west running ridge, actually the same place I killed the buck this past year, he was always in there when the wind was blowing from the south. Every picture I had of him in there, and it was 7 or 8 pictures, he was always in there with a south wind using that ridge.
Now, Jonathan, I can't remember Jonathan's last name from Deer Lab. Do you remember his name?
You asked me too fast.
All right. Then I just can't. And I apologize, Jonathan. But if you haven't checked out Deer Lab, folks, you might want to do it. And since we're taking a little break here, Josh, how do people get a hold of you if they want to, talk to you, share photos, share ideas? How do they reach out to you?
We got a Facebook page, and we're pretty easily, you can access us there at Calculated Killers on Facebook. And me and my buddy John Ford, who helps me a lot with it, we're both on there. One of us, you send us a message or whatever, want to check some of our stuff out. It's on there. There's pictures on there from, all the bucks I've talked about, and goes back for years. You just have to go into the albums. You can see that. We have got an Instagram account. It's also at Calculated Killers. And we are working on getting our YouTube page up to date, getting a lot of stuff uploaded. And we are currently working on a website to start blog and, start doing some interviews with some other people. And hopefully we may be launching a podcast here in the near future as well.
Well, podcasting's fun. Hey, folks, I just want to give a shout out for John Livingston. Pardon me, John, I just couldn't remember your name. It's a couple of seconds ago. He can be found at www.deerlab.com. And John Livingston is a gentleman. He was on my show a couple of years ago, and he's got a great product and it's evolved. And if you want what I'm going to say, the best product to take and manage all your trail cameras and give you the moon phase, the wind, humidity, barometer, all that information, he puts it in. He's figured it out, and pretty smart guy, but it's some of the best information that you can go year to year to year, and you see the same scenario that they're there at the same time and the same place, same year, with the same moon conditions, let's say, and the wind conditions. Then the bet's pretty good. If he made it through the prior season, he's going to be there next year. I'm not going to say he's going to be there at the exact at 1:15 in the morning or 3:45 in the afternoon, but he's going to be around there.
Yep. And that's Deer Lab. Like I said, it's a great site. It's an amazing site.
So that's a little promo for John Livingston at deerlab.com. So when we're thinking, about hunting deer, weather always comes into the factor. What do you like? What kind of weather do you like to hunt?
I like a rising barometer. If you seems like most of the time, a lot of the deer I've killed has been on these high barometer days I'm talking about when it gets up to 30.4, 30.5 or higher. And, it spikes from, say it was 30.1 the day before. And it's usually after a front comes in, it's that first day after when things it's the first pretty day, first sunny day. And I like a bluebird, very cold, crisp morning after that. I've had a lot of luck then. And then a lot of people, don't like the full moon and say deer don't move or whatever after the full moon, but I love hunting the first few mornings after a full moon. I've had a lot of luck, and I've killed a few good deer right after the full moon. I enjoy hunting right after the full moon. So those are probably two of my things that I pay a lot of attention to, when to go in and make a move. And like I said, I do a lot of research as far as it's more about timing and then just hopefully you get the weather. I'll always be there on certain dates because I know it's when most of the does come into estrus in the areas I hunt. And then I kind of wait and pick and choose the stands based on the wind direction or, like I said, the barometer or weather changes.
Now we're talking about temperature changes. What's the right temperature change that you see a distinct change in deer activity? So does it go from 50 degrees to 30, 40 to 20, 40 to 30?
You
What's the delta there?
usually anything, you can look at your average temp for that time of season, and anything under, like a 8, 10 degree drop during, November, let's say, or a little bit earlier than that, it could be as little as a 5 degree drop in October. I don't get to hunt a lot in October, because of work and stuff. Like I said, I save most of my days for November, so I always like to see at least a good front coming in that's going to push the temperature down to 8 or 10 degrees. Like this past year, we had a front come in and it was nasty. We decided not to hunt for a day and a half because we knew this front was coming in. And on Saturday, when the front was pushing in, the wind got up to 20 or 30 mile an hour gust, and the temperature was dropping from, if I remember right, it was like the high 40s, and it was supposed to start dropping around 1 o'clock, noon, 1 o'clock, and by sunset, it was supposed to be down around 18 or 20 degrees. And I told my buddy and them, I was like, we gotta hunt. I said the wind will be rough, but we've got to be in the tree. I was like, they're going to move. And then that's the evening I killed my deer this past year, who I called him No Brow, and we had 3 years of history with him. And that same evening, we run a lot of Spartan cellular cameras. We had 3 other mature bucks show up that same evening, well before dark, moving. There wasn't that many does moving that evening, but the mature deer were on their feet. We ended up seeing, I think it was 3 on the cameras, and what I seen, we seen 3 mature deer that evening when that temperature dropped and that front pushed through there. And that, like I said, that was a real big temperature drop. I think it was 20, 25 degrees that day or something. It was huge.
Well, folks, we've heard a lot of good techniques and tips from hunting the mountains of West Virginia, Appalachia, right? Or how do you folks say it down there? I want to get it right.
Appalachian, what we say.
Appalachian Mountains. So if you say it any other way, you ain't from the neighborhood. So with that being said, Josh, let's give some shout outs to your sponsors and we're going to wrap the show.
Okay, I appreciate it, Bruce. I'd like to thank my buddy, John Thor, who's come on and helped me with this because I work a lot and he works a lot too, but he's a great PR guy and he gets a lot done for us. And without him, we wouldn't be as far as we are. And Remington Scent Control, Scent Crusher, Spartan cameras have been, huge supporters of us. Nationwide Scents, thank God they've given us a chance and believed in what we're doing, and we look forward to the future with them.
Well, on that note, folks, Josh is got it down. You can, if you listen to everything he says, he pretty much knows the deer in his neck of the woods, and that's what I think we all need to align ourselves with, or set that as a goal. Understanding the weather, using all the technology you can, and mountain bucks are hard because, yeah, you can bait them and put minerals out, but the does and everything, they're going to come through and they're not going to hang out like they do on beans or alfalfa or any other forage that we set out in food plot. So my hat's off to you. And I know Steve Flores does a great job down in the mountains. Also, he's a great mountain hunter. And you think about these guys and it's completely different. They're hardwoods and you got mountainous conditions, and hunting is tough. And to put a big buck, mature buck on the ground consistently, you're one heck of a hunter. So, Josh, on behalf of Whitetail Rendezvous, thank you, sir, for being a guest.
I appreciate it, Bruce, and thanks for the opportunity.
Hey, on today's show, we're going to visit with Mike Higman. Mike is the owner of Hunting Gear Deals down in Florida. what is so big about hunting gear deals? Where Mike scours the internet and puts together the best deals that he can find for outdoor gear.
Thanks for joining us. Be sure to tune in tomorrow for another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous, where you can listen and learn from the experts so you can be more successful on your next hunt. Until next time, listen, learn, and succeed.